Good evening. Tonight, Dailies Hangout stream, where we are mainly focusing on, well, I'm mainly focusing on ranged DPS. So that of course means ranged physical, machinist, bard, dancer. And yeah, we're as usual just going down the list, doing the daily roulettes, and then we will finish with something to the effect of a Thalea, and maybe a P12N. And that's basically the stream. That's what we're doing, and just hanging out, having a nice evening aside from that. And yeah, that is of course Daily's Hangout stream as always with me, Kai. And yeah, hey Chris, hey Yisu, hey HK, hey Loxy, and hey Gazel, and Aradil, and Vimia. I hope you're all doing very well. And I can see a bunch of you have already showed up in game. And hey Bob, I hope you're doing well. And hey Amokios, hope you're doing well. Yeah, I was actually, just before the stream, I was thinking, oh no, we're like going to be like 3 people for the level 90 stuff, but hopefully some of you will join me for the stuff so that we can have a pre-made group. Not that that is required. Yeah. I think we'll just start with expert roulette. So if you want to come along for expert roulette, you come over to me, and then we'll figure out who 3 are, like who 3 I'm bringing. Oh, excellent. Hey Tristan and hey Zach, I hope you're doing well. It's okay, HK. We'll figure it out when we get there, or if we land in that situation. It seems like we already have a balanced group as well, so that's nice. Yeah, as always with these streams, this is like not like super intense stuff. So if there's something you're wondering about, something you'd like to ask about, this might also be a great place to get to ask. Maybe I can answer it, maybe someone in the chat can answer it. It doesn't have to be all about dailies. Just feel like I should mention that. Yeah. I do wonder if 4 range DPS would be able to like 4-man a dungeon. It would probably require a ridiculous amount of potions to do that. Simply because you don't really have any good healing. That's alright, Zach. Black Mage is very hard and very complicated. If you're still working on leveling the job, it would be absolutely natural that you would have to like review some things as you get more stuff. Like that's perfectly natural. So at least don't feel bad about it. Hey Mefok, hope you're doing well. And happy weekly reset. And actually just earlier today I was working on a video that features some Black Mage stuff where I messed up my rotation in the footage. Like so badly that I was like, alright, I have to cut there. Oh no! You ran out of subscription, Coco. That's not good. Oh, you're talking about SIP. Yeah, he mentioned that to me earlier. That was very unlucky. Hey Zindra, hope you're doing well. Indeed, Merfolk. I'm going to be like flipping through, whoops, through all 3 ranged physical jobs throughout the stream, like back and forth. What I will probably advise you is maybe be careful learning from what I'm doing when I'm playing Bard. I've obtained a reputation for failing that. Like that one might be dangerous to just take at face value, but we'll see what happens. But of course, there's also always more to learn. So maybe there is something to learn. Hey Sam, hope you're doing well. It is. I am doing very well, at least. Thank you, Lunchbox Box. Really appreciate that. I'm glad to see you. Yeah, exactly, Tristan. Exactly, precisely. Drinking game for me playing Bard is take a sip every time my dots drop or every time my song is down. That would be very, very effective, I'm sure. It has a lot to keep track of. Does it count if you listen to music while playing Bard? Now, that would be nice, wouldn't it? Hey Cat, hope you're doing well. Happy Tuesday. Hey, welcome to the Cult of the Pink, Merfolk. Thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy the emotes. Thank you.
Hurry, Golbez. The city is
Yeah, exactly. Totally a cult.
First the villages and now the capital. Nothing is exempt from their avarice.
Nothing is exempt from their avarice. Hey, welcome to the Cult of the Pink Cerebral Kitty. Thank you so much. I'm pretty sure you're returning, right? I discovered last stream that apparently it says it like you're a completely new one. If you had your first month as a gift, something like that. And yeah, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the emotes. To play Bard correctly, just don't play Bard. Oh, no. No, wait, go back. I mean, Bard is very, very difficult, but that doesn't mean that that it should deter you from playing it if you think that it looks like fun. And that one, of course, goes out to everyone. That's very awkward. I don't think I've ever in this dungeon had the situation where everything actually gets stacked close enough to the behemoth that you can cleave it. But it seems like Dendry has found a way to do it. No, Amokius did. I don't know if Bard is the hardest job. Personally, to play, like, perfect play, I personally feel like Machinist would be harder, but that's me. Because it is, like, one mistake can ruin your rotation for the rest of the encounter. Whoops. I should have used Shield Samba there. But Bard feels like it's very hard to play even at a casual level. In my opinion. Oh no. No! I missed! That was not smart. Hey Blitz, hope you're doing well. So many things to press in a burst. Hey Fila, hope you're doing well. And yeah, it has been a while. Yeah. Don't worry about it, Emir. Sometimes that just happens with this boss. The bad frontline map today is it Shatter. Shatter. I'm not the biggest fan of Shatter myself. It'd work better if they remove the ice. Yep, my main complaint with Shatter, I think I might have brought it up before on stream. Not 100% sure on that one. Pretty sure I have. But the problem I have with Shatter is that unlike all of the other maps, you can the keyword can avoid PvP entirely while progressing the objective. The reason why that is a problem is because it gives new players to PvP the wrong idea. I have had matches where my team got trounced so hard in like a team fight that instead of going back to the objective, they just like awkwardly farmed the small crystals at our base. Like they got so demoralized that they didn't want to go back. And while it is interesting that you can do that, it really highlights the problem with that. Like in both of the other maps available, the only winning move in like all winning strategies involve engaging in PvP. I don't know if it is a winning strategy to just sit in your base and farm small crystals. I'm pretty sure it isn't. Because most matches where I've seen my team do that has led to a loss. But I wouldn't know for certain. It is quite a random game mode. Blitz says I'm looking forward to DNC. Only like 7 months to go. Why? Wait, why 7 months? Yeah, exactly, HK. Can't lose team fights if you don't participate. Also, hey, Kitsune Echo, hope you're doing well. And hey, Varric, I hope you're doing very well. Exactly, good morning, afternoon, evening, or night even.
So be it. I will fight
That's the
with
spirit.
all my strength. To fortify my blade.
To fortify my blade. It's our best friend. It's Blade EX himself.
Power, light or dark, it matters not.
Ether to fortify my blade. You can't subscribe. You can't subscribe until Dawn Trail. Oh, well, that's weirdly specific. But hey, one day you'll be able to access it. Yeah, those kinds of mechanics, Cat, are surprisingly difficult. It's like the blobs in the near raids, where it's kind of awkward because of the server delay. Hey, Ceremony, I hope you're doing well. You know, the other day, Gazel shared on this that, like I think like a few weeks ago even, Gazel mentioned that this fight, it turns out that there is a chance that the safe spot is in the middle of the room. The keyword is a chance. It's just that it's so unlikely that most people just don't see it. And just the other day, I believe Gazel sent a picture of seeing it happen. I don't think I've actually seen it happen myself. Maybe it happened on day 1, and that was the reason why I was so convinced that it was like a regular occurrence.
It's over, my friend.
Oh, no, Warwick. The way that works is what I call Square Enix RNG. I have never seen it. To my recollection, since I've been made aware of the consistent save spot, I have never seen it not be that. I don't do expert roulette every day, but I do it I do it a bunch. So it is surprising that I haven't seen it, but I'll explain to you what I mean by Square Enix RNG after this boss. Right. So, Square Enix RNG. Back in Shadowbringers, I farmed Suzaku, you know, one of the 4 lords, on Extreme for mount. And I have proof of most of the runs that I've done. Because most of them I've done with a group. Let me see if I can find them. Oh, I thought I had done more than 40 runs, but I had done a ridiculous amount of runs. So I did like 39 runs, all of which was with the same group. Right? And the group was structured as 1 tank, 2 healers, and then 5 DPS. This is important because right at the start of the fight, there's 4 phoenixes. Is it Phoenix? Phoenixes that spawn that you have to spread out. They will each fixate on someone. That someone is a DPS. In like 4 DPS will get targeted. Normally it's the 4 DPS. But because there's 5 DPS, you would think that it's 4 random DPS, right? Out of all 39 runs, every single one of those 39 runs, the party leader, who was one of my friends, who was playing DPS for every single run, never was one of the 4 DPS that got targeted. Not a single time out of 39 runs. Not once. That's what I call Square Enix RNG. It's as if the like the random number generator just kind of gets stuck somewhere and just does it the same way every time. The thing that made it extra funny was because sometimes we would have randoms in the party among the DPS that didn't know how to do the mechanic. And the party leader obviously knew how to do the mechanic. Exactly, the RNG never got a new seed. Even worse, it reset to the same starting point at every pull. It's absolutely crazy. It's similar to how when we were doing Criterion recently on stream, and it felt like the boss changed up which combination of mechanics it was using like every 30 minutes or so, but like it was consistently doing the same thing repeatedly, and then it would just switch and just do the other thing repeatedly for a while. It's really funny that it happens. But yeah, it is absolutely feasible and very possible that you can just sit there repeatedly not getting the thing that you wanted, or you're not getting the mechanic. Oh. Oh wow, a boiled egg! Let's do Machinist in the level 90. Then we get Chainsaw. Just checking. I don't believe there's a major change in who can join for the level 90 dungeons roulette. A good, yeah, exactly, a good protein-filled snack. Perfect. 2 extra crit. Let me actually check that, because it would be pretty funny if it did, if it worked. Ah, if only it had been 3 crit. If it had got me to 57, then I would have actually gained crit from it. Ah, Alzadal's Legacy. The egg tags. Yeah, the Suzaku fight is very nice. It's very interesting also. Just while we're on the subject. Turns out you can solo it. You could, like, even at the start of Endwalker. But at the start of Endwalker, I think at the start, maybe in the first raid tier, maybe like in the second raid tier, something like that. You could, but the DPS check was very, very tight. You managed to solo it with Blue Mage. I mean, there's a motivation to do that, since Phantom Flurry is like one of the like most signature attacks of Blue Mage. Yeah, I see what you mean, Blitz. I can understand the argument. I can. It is an unfortunate thing with. Oh, I should have used my reassemble on chain, so I didn't even realize that was an option right now. I should have realized. Oh well. But yeah, I get that. It is a detail with sub MMOs that it's typically both. Oh right, there's the earthly star. Varric, you're not too keen on transpose lines. Well, in that case, maybe you'll be very happy to hear that I did some research on transpose lines this morning, and apparently, making use of all the non-standard black mage stops and tricks, like doing all of it compared to just doing a standard rotation, is something to the effect of 2% more DPS, as opposed to just doing a rotation right. So if you're not too keen on doing transpose lines, but do like playing black mage, you can go far on just fundamentals. In other words, don't let that deter you. Mostly trying to eliminate ice phase casts. Well, that's the entire premise of non-standard, and you will have to learn transpose lines to do that. But the power difference is indeed not that massive. Time for my ultimate OGCD. I call it loot the treasure. Can't see if I'm not reaching. Oh, I am. Excellent. Oh, okay, now I get it, Varric. For some reason, when I read your message, I thought you were saying that you didn't want to learn transpose lines. Now that I read it, you were saying you were learning transpose lines. My bad. Now it makes sense. I was sitting here like, why are you repeatedly arguing for learning them when you don't when I thought you didn't want to? Now it all makes sense. Sorry about that. Yeah, exactly as Steve says, the common argument for an MMO like Final Fantasy XIV is that you're paying, you know, there is the monthly subscription, and there's of course then also buying the game. That is a separate price. But if you focus on just the monthly subscription, the amount of content you find in most MMOs, at least, you know, MMOs worth their salt, the amount of content you'll find in such an MMO is so vast that you don't have to play any other game if you don't want to. So you, like, by paying the monthly subscription, you can remove all other game purchases from your monthly budget as a side effect, hypothetically. That's not usually how it goes. That's not how that's normally not how it plays out, but hypothetically, you could do that. That's typically the argument for, like, subscription MMOs. But given that the subscription price is pretty fixed across the world, some places in the world might be more painful of a price. Like, in Denmark, the monthly subscription to Final Fantasy XIV is it's like a movie ticket. Like a movie ticket. I think it's actually less than a movie ticket now that I think on it. So like, by that argument, I would probably rather have Final Fantasy XIV for a month than a movie ticket. But in some countries, it's not equivalent to a movie ticket. Oh yeah, HK, what I meant by the price varies in the world is actually more that the price is pretty much the same all over the planet, but $12 in, like, relative to Denmark is like, as I said, it's like a movie ticket. It's actually less than a movie ticket if it's $12. But in some countries, $12 is a lot, like a massive amount of money. You don't have that kind of money, so, like, it's not, oh yeah, it's one movie. In some countries, it's like, oh yeah, that's like the same we're spending on food for the month. So in some countries, it might feel a little much to pay that every month. Yeah, that's true, Warwick. I would say, like, if you want to learn any, like, transpose lines, the most valuable one. Whoops, I meant to do this. The most valuable one of all of them is the AF1 F3P. You know, the simple one with using paradox transpose F3 with Firestarter. That one is, like, the biggest damage gain to just include in your rotation of all of them. Like, yes, there's, like, more complexity than that, but if you only are willing to learn one transpose line, just learn that one. The rest, as a combined unit, adds the rest of those 2% that I mentioned earlier. Can I use all of my cooldowns in time, do you think? I think I can. My favorite thing in my fantasy RPG, gun. I am gun mage. I cast gun. I cast bullet. That is a good point, Tyber. Now that you mention it, this music is extremely dramatic for the silliness that is this boss, isn't it? We did the thing! But that is a good point. I wonder why they didn't do anything like they could have added different music, but I guess maybe the music wasn't it, like they didn't have anything that was fitting for it. It would have been nice if they did, but it would be a lot for a single boss. Like a single boss in a dungeon that is going to be current for, well, with the current patch cadence, it was current for 8 months. A total of 8 months. Now it's technically outdated. Right, that is also a line you could do, Varric. But yeah, it's more to say that transpose lines, I just wanted to add, now that we are on the subject, is something that Black Mage mains make out to be a lot more impactful than it is. So I looked into it today, read on it, and apparently the power difference on average, the keyword is being on average and probably estimated partly on a striking dummy or on a spreadsheet, is around 2%. Like, going from just playing good old Black Mage without any shenanigans is like the baseline. Then going full mega sweaty try-hard non-standard Black Mage, like full blast, is like 2% better than that. Like, yes, there's a lot of other things to consider. Non-standard can make you more mobile than what you'd normally be, depending on what you do with it. And non-standard is more valuable the slower the Black Mage is, like the slower their spell speed is. But ultimately, it's like 2% we're talking about. Like, on average. So if you're playing Black Mage and you're like, oh, those transpose lines, it's too much, it's too confusing, it's too overwhelming, but I like Black Mage, then just don't learn transpose lines. Just don't do it. Fun for the whole family. Yeah, well, the thing is, if you're going... So crit spell speed is technically what we call slow mage. And slow mage, as I said, has better synergy with the non-standard play. That is not to say that they have to be combined. Slow with a 2.6 GCD for Fire 4. Well, is it? How slow is it? I don't know what you're talking about, Warwick. Just earlier today, I was playing around with a GCD of 2.4. That is a Fire 4 of 269. Nice. So yeah, you can do whatever you want. The slower you go, the more it benefits from non-standard. But the faster you go, the less you benefit from non-standard. You still benefit from non-standard, and the difference is very, very, very small at the end of the day. It's more like you can do less non-standard shenanigans the far more speed you have. But the reason why it's important to understand the crit spell speed thing, the reason why it is important to understand the crit spell speed thing is because if you stack spell speed, then you will almost certainly not have the stat budget to also get crit to a relevant amount. And that's why when you see like speed builds, you will typically not see crit as a high priority. It's usually the lowest priority because crit scales worse than all the other stats at first. I've talked about this before, but to put it simply, the way crit works is that as you go somewhere around, so to put it very, very simply, when crit reaches like 2000 or so, it's probably a bit less than that when it reaches it, but around 2000 or so, crit becomes so good that it overwhelms all other stats in value. It just instantly flip-flops to being the best stat in the universe. But before you reach the breaking point where crit overwhelms all the other stats, crit is gradually crawls from being the worst stat on the sheet to being okay to being the best. So if you're prioritizing a different stat, then crit simply won't reach that point. This is a spell speed build with a GCD of 2.19. And crit doesn't reach the point it needs to, but the reason why I have more crit is just because the pieces that I've used happen to have crit on them. I don't have best in slot pieces on this Black Mage, that's the reason. But you will see that pretty much all of my melts are not crit. But yeah, basically, for Black Mage builds, you're going with either prioritize crit or prioritize spell speed. And if you're not prioritizing crit, then you're not focusing on crit. But if you are prioritizing crit, that doesn't mean you can't secondarily prioritize speed. You can have speed as a secondary priority, but it being a secondary priority means that it just won't reach the same heights in speed. But it depends on your preference. As you may have seen on the balance, if you look on the balance, is that ultimately, yes, crit has a higher peak damage because it relies on RNG. The power difference between speed and crit builds are so small that the actual things that matter is how well you play. So if you play better on high speed, then you'll do more damage. Personally. Gazel says, what if I like Black Mage but I can't do the baseline move? Then I recommend you take more time with the striking dummy. And... Right, so next we're doing 5, 6, 7, 8. If you want to come along for 5, 6, 7, 8 roulette, then come over to me and we'll figure out who we're bringing. And as I always say, if you still want to come along, but you're like, oh, but I've already been in the group for a few goes, you still come over. If there's more than 4 people, that's when we say, okay, what do we do then? But if you want to come along, you just come over every time. What if I like Black Mage, but I only like the ice part? Then you should play like a different RPG where you can be an ice mage. Louisoix is EU, yes. You will have to be on any EU data center to be able to add to join us, which means anywhere on light or anywhere on chaos. What if I like Black Mage, but I have a job interview in 15 minutes? I don't know what to tell you. Then you'll have to learn it at a different date, Gleaming. Thank you, Varric. Did you just tell me I should play anything other than the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV? Yes, apparently I did. For real though, I have experienced people. Do you seriously have a job interview in 15 minutes, Gleaming? Oh, well in that case, good luck. Good luck. I hope it goes well. Sorry, I wasn't aware that you, like, I didn't realize that you were serious about that one. I forgot to click Battle Voice. Why did I think I didn't have Battle Voice? But genuinely, I can't remember the context, but I do remember someone at one point. I think it was on my, like, on one of my like, I think it was the how to choose your job. Like, to choose your first job video from a while back, someone complained that jobs are associated with weapons because they wanted to use a greatsword as a paladin, and also they wanted to be a DPS and a paladin. So I was just sitting there like, I mean, then you have to play not Final Fantasy XIV. I can't help you. If you play Black Mage too much, as Skazel says, what happens is you'll start to get this reflex to click a button every 10 seconds while you're not in combat. Oh yeah, by the way, on this boss, hopefully you'll hear it, don't attack the ads. Don't attack the ads. Don't attack the ads. Make sure all the ads are in the pink circle. Nice. That was perfect. Yeah, exactly, Kat. It reminds me of playing Greatsword in Monster Hunter. You get really good at knowing when there's an opening. when your entire ability to attack at all relies on you knowing. Yeah. Uh-oh. Healer is feared. Isn't my AoE rotation exciting? I need like an image, like a GIF in the corner of like an extremely exaggerated DPS meter. Like not an actual DPS meter, just something that looks like stuff is happening as I'm mashing quick knock. Hey Sansu, hope you're doing well. I've never been so thrilled by an AoE rotation. I do think that it is a little bit of a shame that so many AoE rotations in Final Fantasy XIV are quite simplified. But sometimes they get quite wild. Good to hear that, Santu. Trying to get how to optimize Black Mage. Oh, you as well. I feel like there's a bunch of people. What happened? Did something happen? You're not the only one. Let's just say that. So tip on this one, in case Milo doesn't know, you can heal Pio in the center if he needs it. Oh, there's the big ones. Oops. Oh, I didn't mean to press that. I meant to press this. I thought for a second I was going to fall off there. Wouldn't that have been amazing? Oh, you're filling the mage slot in T-Proc, Santo. Well, I hope you enjoy it, if nothing else. That was very strange. One of the mobs was clearly targeting me for like a good 4 or 5 seconds while still chasing Amokius. Very weird. Oh, that is a good point, Varric. If you've already mastered the hardest mage to play, like in terms of caster proficiency specifically, then surely you'll be able to play whatever the new mage is. Ooh. What if the new mage is 3 times harder and 5 times more annoying than black mage? I have a feeling that that just won't happen. Like just a weird sneaking suspicion that it probably isn't going to happen. Won't just get Red Mage 2.0. Redder Mage. I have to say, this particular boss fight is one of the most ominous of them all. Pink Mage, when? I wonder what a pink mage would do. Beige mage. Is that like white mage, but just less white? Jet black mage. Blacker mage. Ah, the Hello Kitty mage, of course. Pink mage, white mage with dual cast. Ah, now we're on to something. It's actually it's just a red mage who just really likes white magic. Just like really likes white magic. Bitsfox says, my friend played Black Mage early on, I played White Mage early on, and then when Stormblood was added to free trial, we both picked up Red Mage. You just meet in the middle. Yeah, what we know about the new mage for now is we know it'll be a mage, and we know that what appears to be its job icon probably is something that in other Final Fantasy games has been associated with green mage. Can't remember what that icon was, but that's why so many people are saying it's probably going to be green mage. Exactly, a clover. But ultimately it could be anything. Like that's why I'm saying we don't know if it'll be green mage, but it's probably going to be green mage. Like, just to say, no one said green mage. Like, nothing official has said green mage yet. Gleaming says, what is green mage? Green mage is... Let's see... A mage that specializes in buffing allies and debuffing enemies. For example, spells often associated with green mages are Protect, Blind, and Bar spells, apparently. See what kind of spells those are. Null Element, like Null Blaze, Null Shock, Null Frost. So in the Final Fantasy games where Green Mage exists, that would of course imply that White Mage does not get these kinds of spells, right? Because Green Mage gets them. Like if they go with Green Mage, if they go with Green Mage as its inspiration, then there are two obvious paths to me. They could, like, the two obvious paths to me is either one, dots are technically debuffs, so they could make a dot mage out of it, so damage over time, or, and this would be a lot more creative, but maybe a lot more boring if we were hoping for a dot mage, they could just give it like a lot of buffs. And what I mean by that is you give it like a relatively simple attack spell, and then you give them like 8 different versions of your next attack spell does this. So like they use a buff, your next attack spell gets 100 more potency, your next attack spell does 50% more damage, your next attack spell hits twice, your next attack spell does paralyze or whatever, like just a bunch of different buffs, so you just like cook up your attack and then you just go wham with one big massive chonker of a strike. That would technically be buffs, right? So they could do that. It would be unique and different, but it would probably not be very interesting, I think. And there's also the part that we do see a lot of buffs and debuffs already. But anything is possible. There's also the possibility, because I want to remind everyone who says, well, Green Mage is buffs and debuffs, that's how Green Mage is, that's how Green Mage always will be. I just want to remind you that last I checked, Sage has not been like a techie healer caster in any other Final Fantasy game. Yeah, Marek said the same thing. So anything is possible. That's why I said in my Viper discussion video that a name is irrelevant. It doesn't tell us anything. Because it doesn't. Not even seeing the actions play out in that preview we saw for the Viper tells us anything. It gives us like a very, very shallow slice of what it could be, but anything they've shown, we don't really see what it does, so it could be anything. It could be anything, so we don't know anything about Viper, even though they've shown us stuff about Viper. We know a very, we know that it has three states, right? Dual wield, big glaive, and blue mode. That's it. That's ultimately what we know. The rest of the attacks, we don't really know, because they could easily be changed. So even if we know for a fact that we're getting Green Mage, like if they say it's going to be Green Mage, we still don't know what that means. Yeah, they could make a Green Mage like a Plant Mage. They could absolutely do that. Right, who wants to join for Leveling Roulette, by the way? I will be over here. Come over to me if you would like to come along. HK says Viper is the one player who can't decide if he wants to play Ninja or Summoner. Suda says your next attack spell summons a black mage, I'm guessing was what you're meant to say. I feel like we made a joke about this before. I can't remember the context. Oh yes. I think the job was like the joke started with a white mage. I can't remember why, but we had this this joke about imagine if instead of whatever you did yourself, you could summon someone to cast something. So instead of you applying your dot, you just summon someone who applies a dot. And you just repeatedly just summon more and more people to do that. But what if you could summon people that apply a dot? Or what if you could summon people that summon people that summon people that could apply a dot? And so on and so forth. Just like a looping function of some sort. Just nested and nested and nested. Summoner, but instead of summoning primals, they summon other classes. Yeah, exactly. Cast Pot of Greed. Yeah, this is some real Summon Seraph logic. Summon Seraph. What does Seraph do? Oh, Seraph summons Eos. Just multiple Eos. Summon Squirrel, cast Rabies. Wow. But yeah, as I said, we don't know anything. All we know is that the icon is almost certainly going to be... Like, the icon suggests that it is probably going to be Green Mage. But even if it is Green Mage, it could be anything. Like, it could be anything, even if it is Green Mage. Right, I'll just ask again, because we do have a free slot, I see. Anyone that wants to come along for leveling roulette, come over to me. I guess HK does not want to come. Hey, Skywalker. Congratulations. As I said earlier, HK, if you want to come along for the roulette that I say, like I say, you want to come along for leveling, you don't go, oh, there's no seat open. You just come over. If you want to come along, you just come over, and then I'll figure out whether we can make a group of what we have. You don't have to go, oh, there's no seat for me. We'll figure that out when we get there. Both because some people might be like, oh, it's fine, I'll skip this one, or I've been along for a few ones, I'll skip this one, or... Like, we'll figure it out. But also because, as Tristan says, some people in the group might just switch job. Oh. Oh, right, we can't use limited leveling because HK doesn't have... So anything from AR, pretty much. Wow. You know, I'll go over here so I don't get hit by the knockback attack. Bruh. Of course he uses it on me. Does he not use the knockback thing? Oh, there it is. Oh, whoops. I thought it was green. Whoops. Let's see, Steve says didn't know. Right. So there is this let me see what's it called? The Square Enix token phone app is getting phased out. So I can't remember if they make it so that you can't use it, but they're certainly making it so that you can't get the app again. So they highly advised that that you change to something else. Death by free speech. Awesome. Okay, the app itself is going to stop service. Well, there you go. It is just better to get it done now rather than later, so you don't suddenly one day, like, when it is done and over, then if you haven't switched in time, then there's a good chance the app will not work. So it's very dangerous to just sit on it when they've said that they're going to discontinue it, right? Right, so that was all the 4-man stuff. Anyone that want to come along for trials? Oh, that doesn't sound good, Shiro. Alternative job suggestions. I mean, we don't know what you like, HK, so we wouldn't be able to advise you. Gains damage by sacrificing squirrels. That is an interesting job design, Varric. HK, do you have trial roulette? Do you have alliance raid roulette? Okay. I'd play anything except healer. Best time is to learn on a new character so people know you're Sprout. And Gazel adds, so you don't play warrior. Ah, yes. The green tank. Zishiro suggests ninja. I don't know. You're saying that the best time to try a new job is on a new character so you have the Sprout. I don't think... I don't think there's anyone who's going to get mad at you for being bad at a job when you're still leveling it. Even if you don't have the Sprout icon. There's a more realistic chance that people will get mad at you for being bad at a job if you're playing with a Mentor Crown. But I mean, that's just ridiculous. Like, there's a reason why I recently put out a video explaining what a mentor's supposed to be doing. Because most people don't actually know. Dance to the song of ringing steel. Any thoughts on favorite job quest storylines? I really like the Dark Knight one, but I think most people do.
Furious as a blaze.
Yeah, the Red Mage one is also pretty good. It's just been so incredibly long since I did it that it's hard for me to remember. Red Mage was my first job to level 70. The Black Mage one is also very nice. I decided to not really suggest that one because I remember that one better because I did it much more recently, so maybe I would judge it unfairly for that. But I think it's good. And speaking of silly storylines, ooh, I do believe the Paladin one is like at least the level 50 to 60 part of it is just like it's legendarily known to be bad. Uh-oh. Ow. How about some more butterflies? Yeah, exactly, Shiro. The Paladin story is so ridiculous because of that. No! I'm not ready. I'm not rejoicing. My turret is just wasting. I'm not rejoicing in the glory of combat. Oh. Did... If there ever was a mod that I would think would be absolutely hilarious to have, it would be like you choose whichever one you like either a Goofy scream or like a Wilhelm scream when someone falls off the arena. Something like that would be awesome. Funny with the jobstones T-posing on each other. Yeah, so what Shiro was saying is, because of the lore, specifically imposed by, I believe, the level 60 quest in Paladin storyline, is that essentially, if more paladins exist in close proximity, an alpha paladin must be established, or else the jobstones go on strike. Something like that. Which is a hilarious way to put it. Right, so we're doing Alliance Raid next. Do you have that, HK? And also, Amokius, and that's an interesting thing with casual content. Or what I mean by casual content, and more so to say, it's a little bit more long-winded to say not extreme savage ultimate content. Is that if a boss has a mechanic, but it doesn't kill you, or it doesn't somehow lead to a wipe, then you will never have to learn it. It will be good enough to like just kinda blindly figure your way through it, right? And the mechanics that will wipe you on Ravana is ignoring the butterflies. I think that's pretty much it. Everything else is like, yeah, it'll kill some people, but it will not wipe you. So you'll be fine. Which then leads to people just going, well, I know I have to kill these. In order, how would you rank the physical range DPS strongest to weakest? If we're talking personal performance, then it's probably Machinist, Bard, Dancer. If we're including like the supportiveness, then I'm pretty sure that Bard comes out on top. But that's like from memory. Personally, the power difference between the ranged physical jobs are like single-digit percentage between each other, and that's actually true for most jobs in a specific category, is that there's like less than 10% power difference between them. So if you're asking this because it influences your choice, then I would say you can choose whichever one you like. They're all pretty strong. If it's just out of curiosity, then yeah, then as I said, Machinist, Bard, Dancer, if we're talking personal power, and if we're talking like with a party, then I think it's Bard, Machinist, Dancer. And congratulations, Gleaming! You can't ignore the butterflies, because if you do, they turn into blades! Exactly. How do I play ninja? I just want to highlight this. How do I play ninja? Not mentioning the hand gestures challenge. Speedrun. And Mokius just immediately do the funny hand gestures. It's impossible to bring up ninja without someone going, like, just showing the those like Naruto gifs where they're like doing the hand signs. And also, HK, given that you mentioned that, you could of course also watch my ninja guide, if you would like me to link it for you. There you go. Fortunately, the bunny doesn't kill you. To 10 GG and Chi Jin 10 G and Chi to... That's weirdly specific. To unlock the secret dark ending to Cory in the house. To Chi Chi 10 Jin Jin 10 Chi Jin Chi Chi to unlock Dawn Trail early. That's pretty good. Right. Alliance raids. Joel says, Roulette just put me in a dungeon I've never done, but had a quest for. Didn't know that was possible. I suppose that would be surprising, but it is a trick you can do. Like, if you really want to get really, like, hyper efficient when playing through the game, like when you're forced to unlock the Crystal Tower, for example, when you have Circus Tower, the second part, you could do Alliance Raid Roulette there and just hope that you get it. There's a 50% chance that you'll get it. And then you can continue onwards, having also done your roulette, instead of having to specifically queue for it. It's pretty funny. I do remember we somewhat recently were talking about how if you used Kasatsu and then made a bunny, it should be a bigger bunny. Or maybe just a bunny with a bigger hat. I do think that it is a little bit of a shame that they decided that the limitation to mudras was that there's no repeat hand signs. Or there's no repeat mudras. If there were, they could have gotten like way more creative with it. Kasatsu flop jutsu makes a whole black mage Viera. That's pretty funny. Kasatsu flop jutsu. Broop. Summon a Viera. After Proto Carbuncle, Proto Bunny. On the one hand, I understand why they made that limitation to mudras. On the other hand, I feel like it would be much more interesting as like a core job mechanic to like more emphasize like this memorization of like jutsus and stuff like that. Like they could have gotten like, if they had allowed like more weird combinations for the jutsus, they could have given you way more options. And they could have made it a bigger core part. I'm just saying that you will never ever get to the point of like mudra spam as seen sometimes in Naruto, where they're like, you know, doing like 8 signs or something, because that's just a limitation. But I can understand why they didn't do that, because originally, just saying, originally ninjutsus were OGZDs. Meaning that you were supposed to do like spinning edge, ding ding, right on gust slash. That was how you were supposed to do it. And then they reworked it at some point in Shadowbringers to be GZDs. Kasatsu Doton makes it interactable and teleports you to the GM jail. I will say, before you unlock Goka Meikyaku, Kasatsu Doton is stronger on AoE than Katon. What actually happens is it becomes interactable, and then if the tank pulls the mobs out of the Doton just like should just like a hand should just appear and grab the tank and put them back in the Doton. Cole says, any tips for getting into extreme raiding? Tried Shiva twice with Party Finder, but it seems an hour is not enough for a group of randoms to learn the trial. Yeah, so extremes are not supposed to be beaten in a single sitting. extremes are generally something you're supposed to like watch a guide and then go and do, if at all. Like, it's supposed to be hard content. So my best suggestion would be consider watching a guide if you want to beat it. If you don't care about beating it, then remember that it's optional. Like, it depends on what you're interested in, Cole. If you, like, just remember that it is entirely optional. If you want to do it, then there's of course the follow-up question of, do you really want to do it synced? But yeah, the extreme content is like a massive step up from the regular content. It's not supposed to be slightly harder than the hard versions. It's supposed to be much harder. The only reason why some fights have a hard version is to make it distinctly different from the normal version. But the extreme versions are supposed to be extremely hard. And yeah, as Phil says, expect it to take more than an hour. It might take multiple sessions, and if you can't get like the same group every time, then you might have to like re-progress repeatedly. Yeah, also as Phil says regarding the ninjutsu stuff I mentioned before, Fuma Shuriken had a significant place because the simple fact that it only took one mudra meant that you could weave it faster than Raiton. Steve says it gets too complicated and nobody will play it. I mean, people play Black Mage. I don't think we'll get all the skeletons. Or maybe we will. Hey, I think we got all of them. Wow. 0 explosions. Has the meta evolved to pulling the Bone Dragon yet another block north? I think so. No! Wait, it didn't do damage. I'm guessing that I'm saying that didn't count. It didn't do any damage. I don't quite understand that one, Shiro. Steve, it's more to say that I think part of the reason why a lot of people are not playing Black Mage is because they find it difficult or complicated. I think, Shiro, the reason why I misunderstood or didn't get it is because you said Jin 10, which doesn't work, I'm pretty sure. That is a lot of people that got dumped into our group. Do we actually have 4 people? Oh. But indeed, the thing that makes Black Mage complicated is that it is impacted quite heavily by the encounter. And then it isn't as clear, like clearly laid out as many other jobs. Can't wait for the 3rd triple cast stack. When you start getting confused by the tooltip because it gives you 3 casts but it has 3 charges. Like, Is it 3 swift casts or is it 3 times 3? That's true, Varric, but that is like that is ignoring all of the weird components that goes into doing exactly that. Like, if you actually read all of the tooltips one by one, it doesn't say anywhere that you have to cast 3 Fire Force into Paradox into 3 Fire Force and then Despair. It doesn't say that anywhere. Meanwhile, if you open, say, Dragoon, it will tell you basically what order you're supposed to cast everything in. Ymir, I'm not ignoring you, but I can't help you with ad blocks. You didn't say hi. You opened with complaining about ad blocks, Ymir. But hey, I hope you're doing well. Welcome back. Cast bullet. Exactly. See, Gleaming Sisters as does Umbral Heart get used on the Fire 3? That's already free because I'm in Umbral Ice. Exactly, as Fel says, Umbral Heart is only spent on fire spells in Astral Fire. But see, exactly, that is also something that might not be entirely obvious. Like, a common problem with Black Mage is that a bunch of its information is like hidden away. Like Astral Fire and Umbral Ice's tooltips are like there in a random self-help box that you have to seek out, not in your actions and traits. Indeed, Varric, it's in your gauge tutorial. But the thing is, in your gauge tutorial, it does 1, not say how much Umbral Ice actually recovers, and 2, does not actually explain how much damage you gain from Astral Fire. At all. Isn't that weird? How's Bart been? I mean, I don't think I've made that many mistakes, but all the content I've gotten for Bart has been level 50. Gleaming says the Astral Heart tutorial box just said makes your next 3 Fire 3s free. What? I'm not sure what you're talking about, Gleaming, because it doesn't... It's first of all, it's not called Astral Fire, and second of all, it doesn't talk about Fire 3 specifically. So that's really weird. Are you sure what you're reading is the tooltip from the game? We can check it after the raid if that's what you mean, but I can assure you, Gleaming, that there is no such thing as Astral Hearts. Cat says on either it's become fashionable to greet the final boss here, which never works, of course, so instead of saving 30 seconds you lose 4 minutes. It isn't something that has become fashionable necessarily, it's just that sometimes there's more people trying than not. Varric, Astral Fire boosts your fire damage by 80%. On the third one it's 40, 60, 80%. So Xenoglossy does not benefit, Scathe does not benefit. But it is a fair question. I do believe the tutorial does outline specifically that it only works on fire magic. I'm pretty sure it specifies that. But aside from that, it doesn't say by how much. You forgot the polyglots, Varric. Anybody know how to reopen the elemental gauge tutorial? It is somewhere in the active help menu. I don't think we're making that, but the reason why I wasn't believing in it was because he started casting at 12%. Like, to greet it, he has to start a little late. He has to greet it. Like, he has to be slow. But he was very early. Exactly, as someone else also said in the Alliance raid, at 12% you don't commit. You can't make it from there. Oh yeah, that's that too. That also works. I assumed so, Gleaming. That was also why, like, when you started getting a little creative with the effect of Astral Hearts, that I clarified that it doesn't exist, was because when you weren't explaining its tooltip, I could assume that you probably meant an Umbral Heart. But when you started specifying that it did something that didn't happen, that's when I was like, well, there is no such thing. But I did kind of assume from the very start that you meant Umbral Hearts. That was the weirdest not really commit ever. Right. Yeah, it is. I suppose it would be a little weird with the way that it's worded. Let's see. An Umbral Heart is consumed each time a fire spell is cast, nullifying the MP cost increase applied by the Astral Fire status, and of course the Astral Fire status itself doubles the cost of your fire spells. So that of course implies that for that to make sense, it would either have to, you know, reduce the cost of something that doesn't cost anything, because fire spells don't cost anything in Umbral Ice, or it would have to have the cost of whatever you're casting anyway, which also doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I can understand the confusion. Cat says, this is why I watch your guide, so I don't have to decode all that. Exactly. This is also part of the reason why in my guides I go, you know, at this level you learn that, which does this, which means that, is because that both means you don't have to sit down and figure it out. It also means that in case you didn't quite get it, now you do. Because sometimes that can be necessary, right? Like a particularly egregious one, as I've said before, is Summoner. Like, I've said this like a dozen times, but I'm just saying, this leaves something unexplained. Like, there are some things here that you just don't get from reading this tooltip. It doesn't explain, like, it doesn't explain what Gemshine does when it's fire aspected. And it doesn't exactly explain that it spends your fire attunement. It doesn't explain what Ifrit's favor is for. And it doesn't explain where Ruby Arcanums come from. So, reading, like, if I gave you just this tooltip alone, you would probably have, like, if you didn't know what Summoner does already, then reading this tooltip is completely irrelevant. It doesn't tell you anything. So some jobs kind of need that. Today's chat has been brought to you by Black Mage. Get out of my ley lines. You're about to hit 60. Well, yeah, that would be a very good time to check the next part of the Black Mage guide. I do believe there's a pretty big segment in my guide about Fire 4. Right. So next we're doing normal raids. Just give me a sec. You know what? That's fair. I'll be right back as well. And then we'll do normal raids. In the meantime, vanity restored. Here. Alright, I'm back. Hey Xaviers, hope you're doing well. Yeah, exactly. Hey Riku, hope you're doing well as well. It's been a while, hasn't it? Exactly, Manatee left. Nap time for Manatee. Manatee's right here. Gleaming says, Summoner feels pretty easy to play, but the actual text of the tips leave a lot to be desired. Yeah, exactly. I've described this before. The thing that makes Summoner really awkward is because it lends itself incredibly well to someone who just picks up the job and just clicks buttons. And then things work. Rico says, I don't see your stream on my front page anymore. In that case, remember that there is a Discord community server, and if you go there and grab the reminders role, then you'll get a notification when I plan a stream and around 15 minutes before I start a stream. So that way you will not miss a stream in the future. You will. I'm also pretty sure if you go to, like, I know you said your front page, and as you said, you don't often go to the subscriptions page. If you do, you'll probably find me there. You can also assume that because I typically start a stream at around 5 p.m. GMT +1 on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Usually, sometimes there's a little bit of a mix, but you can see that on the weekly schedule on the Discord server as well, and it's also on the YouTube channel, if you're not certain. But I'm pretty consistent with the streams, so if you just want to write it down so you know, you can do that as well. But there's of course also the option that that what you're really looking at is you open YouTube, you want to watch something, so you just check the front page, and for some reason YouTube didn't suggest my stream, so you don't watch it. And you know what? That's how the world works sometimes. So I get it, but yeah, if you're sad that you missed the streams because they're not on the front page, this could alleviate that. Beamy says, what's your favorite ranged physical? Aesthetically, Bard. Practically, Dancer, in terms of the one that I like playing the most, probably. But that's more so because I find Dancer the least overwhelming of the three. Sometimes amusing just due to its seeming arcane and confusing reading the tools in an action guide. But in practice it's like the magic version of Bard with occasional cast bars. I guess it is a common meme to call Summoner the fourth ranged physical job because of the mobility of it. But yes, Summoner, the reason why its tooltips are so massive is because they're basically constructing a job who works almost like it's meant for a different game almost. So each thing has to explain in minute detail what it actually does, even though what they actually do are really, really simple. When it, like, at the end of the day, like, you press Ifrit, it summons a guy, it does damage, and lets you do two other things, basically. That's what it does. But because they are limited to the Final Fantasy XIV way of how actions work, it takes a lot to explain that. And it also has to include, you know, it has to include things like, let's see, effect ends upon execution of certain summoner actions. Like, they have to include these clauses and limitations and stuff as well. Like, it's almost like reading a Yu-Gi-Oh card, right? They have to include all these rules and stipulations about how the action works, but what it actually means is does damage, let's use Ruby Right twice, and let's use this specific Ifrit combo, and that's it. Like, that's what it's trying to say, but it takes a lot because of how these kinds of tooltips are designed. Rico says, on another note, I recently maxed Machinist. I think it's fun, but it hasn't quite clicked for me like Red Mage yet. That's fine. As long as you're having fun, that's what matters, but I do get that. Like, I also find Machinist quite difficult at times. Right, so normal reads. That's a good point, guys. I was trying to give like a relatable example, but you're right. Yu-Gi-Oh cards have a lot more rules on them. If Summon Ifrit was written like a Yu-Gi-Oh card, it would also include that you can't move while, well, actually it doesn't have a cast time. It might include that you can move while casting it, and that you can't cast other spells during the recast time of it, and Ooh, it doesn't cost... Let's see... It does... There's a mistake here. Summon Ifrit does not actually say that it uses the Ruby Arcanum. It doesn't actually say that it uses the resource. Huh. Well then. Oh yeah, that is also true. That there is a Final Fantasy trading card game. And what do you mean? Oh right, that's what you mean. For some reason, I read it as COG, so it's like cognomic. Yeah, I suppose. But yeah, the way, the reason why, and I have talked about this a little bit before. The reason why a lot of tooltips are ridiculously long or absurdly worded, like where like a particularly common one to talk about is Living Dead. The reason why they're so long-winded is often because they have to like adhere to the rules of the tooltip writing. Like they're writing them in a very, very strict way. But that of course means that if the tooltip needs to say a specific set of things, Ifrit cannot be special summoned. Ifrit can only be summoned when Bahamut exists in your graveyard. To summon Ifrit, you also have to sacrifice one Ruby Arcanum from your spells and traps. You have to tribute, maybe. Would that work? Can't remember if they use that wording in that context. Also, Ifrit cannot be special summoned or set. That's also very important. What about Alexander? Yeah, I don't think Alexander can be special summoned either. That is also true, Xavier's. Yeah, and technically, Living Dead is also that it like the real reason why it's super long-winded is because it actually does 3 things. But the order of the things makes it feel a lot longer. That sounds like a really funny challenge to do. What if Final Fantasy XIV abilities were cards? Like trading cards. If it's any consolation on that, Beamy, at least after the Mock Tomes event where this was the meta, people have gotten really good at this particular fight. Like this particular fight. I mean, it's better than nothing, right? Maybe Square Enix will add a trading card game mode to the saucer. Yeah, because technically, Triple Triad isn't a trading card game. It's a collectible card game. Because you can't trade. Let's see. Bloodwedding is easy. At the end of your turn, regain life points equal to the amount of life points damage you deal to your opponent in that turn. You cannot trade the Triple Triad cards, no. You can only earn them. Here says, I was going to cook breakfast like a responsible person, but someone brought home a generic brand cereal box the size of my torso that only says the word Berry Crunch. So now I have that. I mean, that sounds pretty good. Oh, it sounds pretty nice. If the early years of the game or anything is to go by, if abilities were trading cards, everyone would have a level 15 pugilist. Why 15? Is that when they learned... what was it called? Was that the one called internal release? That thing that gave you like 30% more crit rate or something like that? And then everyone would also have like level 4 archer, so that you got raging strikes. All the mages would have to have gotten far enough with Thaumaturge that they could get swift cast. Right. Well, that means that the next one we're doing would be... Whoops. Would be, I think... Was that all the roulettes? Yes. The ones that I planned to do, at least. And that would mean that we're doing Thalea next. Yeah, they will also need Lancer because blood for blood. And for those that are completely lost as to why this matters, is because back before Stormblood, we had cross-class actions. And, well, that meant that you could have, on most physical DPS jobs and even some casters, you could have Raging Strikes. Black Mage had Raging Strikes. For anyone that goes, what's Raging Strikes? This is Raging Strikes. It just had a longer cooldown. And I think it was 20%. But you could have Raging Strikes on Black Mage. And Blood for Blood was Lance Charge, the only difference being that the cooldown was longer. I believe the damage bonus was 15%, but it also made you take 15% more damage. Like, it went both ways. That's why it was called Blood for Blood. And that's also why the icon looks like blood and not a lance. And then Internal Release, or whatever it was called, was a monk ability that gave you crit chance. Beamy says, Curious George in one of the warrior job quests uses Bloodbath. That's because Bloodbath was a warrior action. It's very interesting with the Gazel, did you want to come first, Alea? I thought you didn't have it. Just checking before we go. Okay, just had to make sure. Yeah, if you fight, for example, the what's it? The archers in the Black Shroud. Just any archers, really. Then they will use, I believe it's called Eagle Eye, which just increases your dexterity. It used to increase your hit chance, I believe. But it doesn't exist anymore. Similarly, you will see pugilists use, I believe it's called evasive footwork or something like that. Maybe just footwork, which gives you a dodge chance bonus, which doesn't exist anymore. Bloodbath might make better sense in that way. I think the logical reasoning for why they moved Bloodbath to be a melee DPS role action was because it made better sense for tanks to, you know, if they are going to heal, it would make better sense if they healed separately. And then it wasn't related to their damage, because that's not what tanks are supposed to do. Then one expansion later, after they added role actions, they decided that warrior gets nascent flash, which had lifesteal in it. Yeah, Touch of Death was also a particularly funny one, because if I remember correctly reading into it, it cost like a ton of TP. It did nearly no damage, but it applied a brutal dot. Like a weirdly brutal dot or something to that effect. And if I remember correctly, Monk had like multiple GZDs as part of its rotation that had nothing to do with the whole Greased Lightning or forms even. So a signature part of the rotation would naturally evolve to be, well, while you want to use this and this and this to keep those up, you need to like loop through to keep your Greased Lightning going, because that buff doesn't last long. So Monk had to like juggle its GZDs to actually make things work. And then they like gradually removed everything that wasn't related to Greased Lightning and forms. And now we're here. Multiple jobs had this, where where they had like extra actions that had nothing to do with their combos. But then, like, those have all been, like, gradually removed. And that was actually something that I was wondering. Can't remember who said it. Someone said, oh, that's where the buff icon comes from Disembowel, and that confused me a lot, because I have no idea the relation. The icon for Disembowel is new. Back in the day, the buff that Disembowel applies was given by Heavy Thrust, which was a GZD that had nothing to do with your combos. But if I remember correctly, if you used it, it broke your combo. So you had to, you know, finish your set and then use Heavy Thrust. Which actually meant in Stormblood, you had an 11-step rotation. as Dragoon as opposed to 10. Yes, Disembowel is called Power Surge, right? Right now. Power Surge used to be a buff that increased your next jump. From when? Heavensward? Life Surge for jump. I remember in that life, that blood of the dragon increased the damage of your jumps, like in general. But because it was a maintained buff, that was like a little bit meaningless. But that might explain that if it looked like the Power Surge buff icon we have now. Oh man, Yek, that's the worst when you see someone pop in that clearly has broken gear. And you're sitting there like you can't really do anything.
Come, mortals, make your way through our watery sanctum. Let us see how you fare against my servants.
The Dark Knight had a lot of really cool animations. I really, just to highlight one, I did really like the, I can't even remember what it was called, but the final step of their enmity combo. Like you slash down with your weapon and then you actually shoot like dark energy at your target with your other hand, like with your left hand, I believe. It's very cool. Power Slash. That sounds right. No, I was randomly standing on top of my dance partner, so my curing waltz healed for more. Excellent. I mean, Delirium's animation is pretty cool as well.
Only to be expected for they who vanquished my pupil Beauregard. It shall be my pleasure to welcome you personally.
Hey, Phil, when you say the way Darkseid used to work, do you mean the Heavensward version or the Stormblood version?
I have looked forward to this moment, children of man. The scholar shall measure your depth of knowledge.
The reason why I ask is because, to my knowledge, there's a difference. In Stormblood, Darkseid simply it increased your damage and enabled access to all of your dark magic and your dark arts ability and stuff like that. But the downside to that, the cost of doing that was that it impeded your ability to recover MP from all other sources than your own sources, like your abilities, which also meant that your passive regen stopped and that others couldn't help you if they had something. But it gave you 20% more damage output, so there was no reason to not have it active all the time. In Heavensward, I believe I read, because I didn't play at that time, I believe I read that the dark side itself cost MP to maintain. So by virtue of that, you had to like use it as like a burst mode in a way.
Of ignorance be cleansed.
Like, Darkseid simply, its effect in Stormblood was you do 20% more damage. You can't recover MP from any other sources than your abilities and actions.
Join me in
And
deepest knowledge.
also it gave you access to basically all of your dark abilities like Dark Mind, Dark Arts, Dark Passenger, all of that jazz, which you wanted to have access to. You couldn't use Blood Weapon without it, to my knowledge. So, because of the combination of things, it pretty much meant that there was no reason to not have it active in Stormblood, which meant that while really interesting,
And you shall find
it didn't really do anything. It was like something you just toggled, right?
small wonder the others have exalted so.
So many things to cast.
O waters purifying, reveal their nature.
The way that it worked, Phil, is if you had Grit on, which was your tank stance, then you could not use Blood Weapon. You could use Blood Grit instead, which made it so that you recovered MP from being attacked.
Share with me
And
your
Blood Weapon
illuminations.
reduced your G-CD and made you recover MP from your attacks. But you had to not be in Grit to be able to use it. And because Grit cost a G-CD to activate, it meant that while you could freely hop out of Grit, it cost you something to go back in. So it was quite awkward if you wanted to use both. You couldn't properly use both on cooldown.
Not all answers
Welcome to the stream where we play ranged physical and talk about Dark Knight. That's fine. We need to, like, duck for cover the moment this mechanic is resolved.
prove to me the wisdom
Yeah,
of
Dark
man.
Knight was very cool. I believe in Heavensward it had a lot of tools that were related to parrying.
Us enlighten one another. Well done, wise children. Well done.
Smooth sailing so far, I see. Come then, mortals.
Phil says, wasn't it only Warrior that had Defiance as an OGCD?
Have you
Oh,
got the stones
okay, Warwick,
to
thank you
face
for
the
joining.
navigator?
And enjoy work. The way that the tank stances worked in Stormblood is Dark Knight had to use a GCD to activate Grit, but since it was a buff you applied and you could just turn it off, you could just right-click Grit off, so it was free to jump out of it. Paladin had to use a GCD to switch to Sword Oath, but also spend a GCD to switch to Shield Oath, so it cost something to switch stance every time for Paladin. As you said, Phil, Warrior had Defiance and Deliverance, with Deliverance being the damage stance. They were OGCDs. At the start of Stormblood, I believe, when they added Beast Gauge, before that you like built stacks of a buff. and then you spend all of the stacks to use Fell Cleave. But in Stormblood, at the start, it cleaned out your entire beast gauge if you switched stance. That was the reason why it was free, like in terms of GCDs, was because the cost was that you lost all of those resources. But shortly into Stormblood, they removed that, so you didn't lose anything from switching, which was very fair and balanced. You know, as Warrior has always been. I think I'll use my burst after this.
Rise above the white caps.
First! I'm here first!
Ah, you don't disappoint.
I think so the thing is that,
Like the stormy seas,
to my knowledge, when running in an optimized group back in Stormblood, the way that your opener would typically go as main tank is that you would do one enmity combo while in tank stance, and then you would switch to damage stance. Dark Knight could do that. Paladin couldn't really do that. Warrior could technically do that, but would rather not, right? Because they lost all of their resources for doing that. So it's really weird. Hey Mastermind, hope you're doing well. We are doing the Thalea Alliance raid.
Join us in the excitement.
Do your one blow kiss will be very funny. I'm surprised no one has. Or did I not notice it? I don't even have the emote like easily accessible because I've given up. I've given up trying. Because there's always a whole bunch of people trying. But I guess it has lost its charm.
That's the way, my clever serpents. Feel the might of the navigator. Go on, my pets. Don't be shy.
Like here should do. Yeah, Gold, the alliance raids gets more complex as you go, but the thing is, a lot of people have complained that the final alliance raid of Endwalker is underwhelming, but I would like to pose a counter argument to that. I brought this up before. However, my counter argument is the reason why the fight feels more underwhelming is because the bosses are being more fair. In the first two alliance raids, the bosses used way more like shenanigans, like just yeeting you off the arena or killing you if you didn't do a mechanic exactly right and things like that. And these bosses don't do that to that same extent, so they feel underwhelming by comparison because they don't use cheap tactics in the same way.
To seek new horizons, you must come together as one. It falls to you and yours to navigate the seas ahead.
After all this time, it feels strange calling to you thus. Thank you.
Did they actually get nerfed, the Stormblood raids? Because I don't feel like they did.
Not long now, till our journey together must end.
I believe it was 45 seconds, Phil.
I am
But
the
close
last
enough.
to face you.
Strong are they who roam.
Wow!
Firm amidst the storm.
Wow! I do agree on that. I do agree on that, Space Queen, that one of the problems with the balance as a mechanic is that it's so far in. But that is actually also a problem with the mechanic now. If you do Aglaya now, there's a very real possibility that you will skip that mechanic entirely. Which I feel is a little bit of a shame. Gazel says, is there a way to tell if a GCD with its own cooldown is affected by skill speed or spell speed? I do believe there is. Can't remember. I'm pretty sure Gnashing Fang has the explanation that explains that. I'm pretty sure it says so in the tooltip. It's pretty long-winded, but I can't remember exactly how it goes.
Wind, guide my arrow. My bowstring sings.
Could you imagine the nightmare that would be Savage Alliance Raid 24-man statics? May I introduce you to World of Warcraft? Could you imagine the nightmare that is a 40-man static? It used to be like that. Part of the balancing of those old 40-man raids is that it turned out, as we've seen in retrospect, that most of the like Molten Core, that incredibly difficult first 40-man raid in World of Warcraft, can be beaten with like 25 players or less with no major issues. Just think about that for a moment. The raid is balanced in such a way that you can still win with like 40% of your raid dead.
Come, grant us our heart's desire. Say not your sense.
Hey Angel, hope you're doing well.
Those who hesitate are lost.
I wanted to press Saber Dance. That was the saddest self-kill ever. I walked up to the safe spot and then died. Bruh.
Behold the wanderer's arrow.
Well, at least I can do my 2-minute burst, I guess. Oh. The sadness. Walking savage. It was, yeah, exactly, it was misinput.
I'm glad that it was you who came to us.
And very true, as Fel says, Final Fantasy XIV is far from immune to the toxicity that we have seen in World of Warcraft. It, to some degree, it's everywhere. It's just that it manifests in different ways. Ow.
Blessings be upon you on the road ahead. May the wind ever be at your back.
Oh, nope. Making lunch savage. Oh. I was wondering why those pulls suddenly stopped.
The sweet soul of parting. I beg you, stay the course to the end.
Yeah, Gazel says, I see the difference now. Those that aren't affected by speed have extremely long explanations. That is effective. Beamy says Final Fantasy XIV's high-end raiding community can be extremely toxic, speaking from experience. That is a pretty good example, and I believe part of the reason why you might argue that that part of the Final Fantasy XIV community is smaller is probably partly because that raiding is less of a core part of gameplay in Final Fantasy XIV as opposed to, for example, World of Warcraft. Because it is less of a core thing, there are a lot more players that aren't participating. And because they aren't, that means that there's less of that community toxicity. That is also a very, very, very likely Space Queen. This one, I believe, harkens back to the Elo hells of League of Legends. Weird how there can be a correlation that there are people that are stuck in Elo hell that can't possibly explain why they lose all of their matches. It's almost like they forget that the only thing that is consistent in 100% of their matches is that they themselves are in the match. And if you aren't as good at the game, you might not realize that the reason why things aren't working is because you are bad. Which means that you just get more sour towards the game as a whole and think everyone else is bad because you can't do things, right? So it makes perfect sense that the worse hardcore players, like hardcore Savage Raiders and stuff, would be more likely to complain. Zach says the one reason I'm a solo player is because people's sourness makes it unfun for me. That makes sense. A huge part of like I've said it before, part of the reason why I don't like Savage Raid myself is because my motivation to Savage Raid is almost entirely dependent on whether I'm playing with friends. I don't want to play with like some sweaty tryhard raid team. I'd rather play with friends and then we see how far we can get. Of course, I don't want to play in a group where we all know it can't be done because we don't have the combined skill necessary. But I would like to play with people that I enjoy playing with first and foremost. I have the massive advantage of being able to just, start a stream and then go, let's bring people to do random roulettes. People, it's not uncommon for people to bring up oh man, whenever I do my dailies, there's so bad players in the groups. Meanwhile, I'm I don't see that very much. But whenever, the majority of the weekly roulettes that I do in a week, I do on these streams, which means that I have this experience of, I don't experience that. But then again, I do my expert roulette with 3 curated players that I know either are good just by default or I taught them, so they're probably good, right?
Fulfill our final wish. See every last Lotus returns to the star.
I think I have it figured out. Excellent. I only got hit once, Amokius. That's pretty good. Don't get hit, that's the mechanic. That's most mechanics. If you want to boil it down even further, it's move somewhere and let thing resolve. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this works. I'm pretty sure this should work. Mechanic, survive. Look at that, Amokius. You can do this. It's just one. You'll get better.
Blessings be upon their fairies.
Ah!
Trust your faith that gave rise to this radiance. Shine like the stars on high.
Stars on high, fall as rain. You get better if you stand and let thing resolve instead of moving around. just don't make it complicated. Just stand and let thing resolve. It's way smarter than that. You just do that. Lamau, easy.
Mercy be upon our beloved children.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with that, Phil. It is quite shocking how massive how massively common mod usage has become, considering that it isn't actually allowed.
Not a single note of strength shall we hold back.
Osman, the observer, says that argument of standard that thing resolved reminds me of my friend who said, you don't have to actively attack to really kill a boss since the game has auto attack. I mean, there is actually, I'm pretty confident if you actually if you actually just went and only auto-attacked, I'm pretty sure most bosses, like the entire raid, only auto-attack the boss. If we just ignore the fact that you would also, you know, need healing, if we ignore that part entirely, then you might have DPS checks you can't meet. There are normal dungeon bosses that have DPS checks, and those you cannot meet with just auto attacks. That is not possible. Second of all, as Tiny Grow mentions, there is a timer. Yeah, you might not actually be able to kill the boss in 90 minutes by just auto attacking. I was just thinking I should have used Shield Samba, but I just realized that Aradel had already used Troubadour. Let's see, second one is a donut, second one of us is a donut. It was your faith who gave rise to this radiance. You made this. It's basically what they're saying. You made this. You made this. Let's see. Yeah. As someone mentioned, who was it? It flew by so, quite suddenly. That there's this show don't talk about it mentality. Yeah, Mastermind said mod usage has that strange don't ask, don't tell aspect to it. But as Fel says, the don't tell part has gone out the window at this point. There's actually, I can't remember. There's some people that have mentioned that they feel a little bit uncomfortable because they are in free companies where they just openly talk about mods in like the free company chat, for example, which is not smart. Don't do that. All it takes is one person who bothers to write the report. But it is true that it is weird that they've that it has gotten to this point. And Braxton Scholar is very good. All healers are viable, and Scholar is pretty good. It fares particularly well in coordinated groups. Let's see, Osman says, this was an argument we had since I said Final Fantasy XIV was a mixture of action combat and tap targeting. It's kind of a hybrid system. He refused to allow me to call it a hybrid system when it actually is. I don't know. I'm willing to take that Final Fantasy XIV is a tap targeting game. I feel like it's fair to say that it is pure tap targeting. I believe the action combat, to my understanding, is games where basically you don't have to target anything. You just click in the direction you want to attack, and then you like just swing in that direction or shoot in that direction. That's action combat in MMO logic. So tap targeting is supposed to be the opposite of that, right? That you have to target something, and while Final Fantasy XIV has a few select things you can put on the ground, that is to be expected. Like, that doesn't necessarily make it a hybrid system, it just means that it has a few exceptions. But I don't know how the auto attacks get into that, because you have to auto attack your tap targeted target, right? Cole says, is this Nero in the Omega Rage the same Nero from Praetorium? Yes, he is. That is the same Nero. Yet, personally speaking of mods, I don't use any. Like, I just don't use any. There was a time where maybe I have used ACT, but the thing is, let me put it like this. If you get ACT because you're motivated by seeing your own damage increase, let me put it like this. What's going to happen is, first, you're going to be very excited to see yourself high on the meters. And once that exotic new thing has lost its charm, you're instead going to be disappointed that everyone else are so far down. Unless you're like a Savage Raider or something. Even if you're a Savage Raider, perhaps. So ultimately, it's just going to come back to bite you. Cole says, is there a scale element to mods at this point? Like, if we want to be consistent, can we really ban that large of the player base? I mean, that's ultimately down to the developers, but I'm pretty sure that the only way they could properly solve this is to add, like, some sort of, like, anti-cheat system, which might also, like, catch mods. Which would mean, instead of banning the users, which are many, they might be more likely to, like, if they were to, like, go cold turkey, right, just full stop on mods, then I'm pretty sure the better solution, like, for the game would be to add something that prevents the use of mods, rather than banning everyone who has been using mods, because of the scale, as you said. Has it gotten anything fun and new? I mean, Scholar is the only pet job at this point. If you played back in A Realm Reborn, then something you'll notice is that you only have one pet option now. You can glamour it to look like Eos, Celine, or any carbuncle as you like. It has gotten way more responsive. Like, your pet responds almost instantaneously when you ask it to do something, and you don't have to micromanage its embrace anymore. What else? You don't have a very involved attack rotation anymore. Osman says, I feel the auto attack thing he was trying to say it's not action combat because you don't actually have to attack. That has nothing to do with something being action combat. I'm pretty sure that has nothing to do with action combat. Like, that's not what defines action combat or tap targeting, to my knowledge. Weird. What a strange argument. Beamy says ACT will make you play worse, especially if you're a raider. That is actually very possible. You suddenly look at the damage instead of looking at the game. Yeah, the thing is, ACT might be helpful for your own learning. But I'm just saying that at some point, whatever value you can gain from it will eventually dissipate. And unless you're like a savage raider and might need this information for whatever reason, because you probably don't, then ACT is more likely to make you sad than excited. Because at some point, it's going to stop being exciting to see yourself at the top of the meters. Because at some point, you're going to be disappointed that you're at the top. Not because there's anything wrong with that, but because everyone else is so far down. Like, you're picturing, oh man, how much damage I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be beating everyone, but going into a dungeon and beating the other DPS is exciting, I suppose. But then when you see that that DPS is actually being beaten by the healer, which can happen, then you're going, this is going to take 20 minutes, isn't it? This dungeon is going to take 20 minutes, isn't it? And, like, it's just going to make you annoyed or sad rather than excited at some point. So just, like, think about that. You might not need this power. A pure tap targeting game that has the feel of an action combat game or something like that. I don't know. I'm not like the biggest fan of like all these like sub genre stuff, but I'm pretty willing to step into the box of just saying Final Fantasy XIV is a tap targeting game. To my understanding, when they say action combat, it has nothing to do with how wild the fights are. It's just that action combat has become synonymous with games where you don't tap target. Like, in some capacity, what people mean when they say action combat game is not tap targeting. But they just don't say that because that sounds weird. Phil says, people think Final Fantasy XIV isn't a tap targeting game. I don't think that's the argument. I think it was just that someone was very, very aggressively demanding that Final Fantasy XIV doesn't even as much as consider itself mildly relatable to an action combat game. Themia says, I prefer to look at my overall pass, not at the moment. Plus, I heard AZT only looks at a DPS, which doesn't account for rate buff damage contribution. That is correct. That is correct. To my knowledge, that DPS meter, all it does is it just keeps track of the damage number you put out and writes it down. It doesn't do any math, like, in that regard. It just takes the number as is and adds it, which means that support jobs are going to look a lot worse on that. Then I think part of the reason for that is because this whole thing with DPS meters is something that comes, like, that originates from, like, from World of Warcraft. And in World of Warcraft, there wasn't a reason to worry about other things than a DPS, because the only raid buff you had was Bloodlust. But when World of Warcraft added a support DPS recently, because it's kinda recent, I believe they added, like, to a DPS meter. I can't remember which one, or maybe all of them have developed, but they actually went and added the capacity to add the contribution real time from the support DPS to them, because it was a massive problem. Because here's the thing, in World of Warcraft, it has always been normal that the DPS meter's right, mostly. So if A is beating B, then A is better. So if people see that this new support DPS is doing basically no damage, because they were, then they'll think the specialization is bad. Because they're used to seeing that what the DPS meter says is law. Phil says enmity lists don't 100% work because crits generate extra aggro. They don't. On top of the aggro from the extra damage, they don't. Crits appear to do extra enmity because it's a bigger hit. The way like, enmity is extremely simple in Final Fantasy XIV. In Final Fantasy XI, it turns out enmity is incredibly complicated. But in Final Fantasy XIV, enmity is really simple, and there isn't very much to add. It's 1 damage equal 1 enmity, and 1 healing equals to half an enmity equally spread to all enemies you're in combat with. So that means if you're in combat with 5 things, it's a 5th. A 5th spread to them equally, so it's a 10th to each of them, right? The only difference, the only things you have to keep in mind is that some actions just generate extra enmity, but if they do, they say that. The exceptions are the tank ranged attacks that say it. They have a 5x5 or a x7 multiplier. Can't remember which is which, but they will at least do 750 enmity potency, at least. And taunt, provoke does somewhere in the ballpark of 2,000 to 4,000 enmity, even though it does 0 damage. Enmity potency, by the way. So that means if you do an attack that does 4,000 potency, that's the amount of enmity that provoke would do. I can't juggle my opponent, therefore the combat is boring. That, it sounds like they want, like, Devil May Cry. It sounds that like that's what they're picturing. Let me just finish on that. Osman says, but also they said animations of the game just look nice. That's it. Everything is just about pressing a button. And I'm like, does that apply to almost? Doesn't that apply to almost every game? Correct. This person has boiled down the conversation to the same point as stand and let thing resolve, right? They've simplified it so much that yes, that's also how Devil May Cry works. For example, you just have to press the button to make the enemy juggle. But something that is worth keeping in mind, because Shiro said in duty the aggro table tells you the DPS rankings. Kind of. Yeah, exactly. Sure. Also, that Beamy says Shirk also transfers enmity. That is also true. Kind of that you can watch the enmity. The reason why it's kind of is because tanks can directly interact with the enmity. You can't actually see how much damage the tanks are doing in relation to enmity. And because healers do a substantial amount of healing, which generates enmity, you don't know which healer's doing more damage, if that's important to you. For all 4 DPS, you would know who has done the most damage by virtue of who's highest ranked on the enmity. You can use that information, but for the rest of it, it can get complicated. Like, the enmity is better than nothing, but it's not perfect. It's pretty good. Like, if you just need to know who you give close position as a dancer, it's probably fine. Generally, my approach is I check the melee DPS with the most HP, check, do they have a good weapon? And then maybe I'll reevaluate if they keep not being top on enmity among the DPS, just as an example. And also, as Amokius says, even casting a mudra generates enmity. That's because applying a buff generates enmity. And for some reason, casting mudras themselves counts as casting a buff. They generate a minuscule amount of enmity, like an extremely small amount, like 40 or something like that. Not 40,000, 40. Yeah, if you want to practice and see how good your damage is, and you don't have a DPS meter, does dancing also generate enmity? Can someone auto attack that? Just one auto attack? Someone in the party? Just auto attack once? Yes! Dancing does in fact generate enmity. Space Queen says, why does Stone Sky Sea sink? So Stone Sky Sea has a level 60, 70, 80, and 90 level sync encounter. Just one. But it does have a level sync that also reduces your item level substantially. What if you eat food in combat? Either that generated no enmity or generated so little that I can't even see it. Let's see, Cat Damon said something about the Squeenix token. I believe the story there... So, Cat Damon, are you using the physical Squeenix token or are you using the phone app? If you're using the phone app, you need to switch to a different authenticator. Like, just anyone you like, but just not that one. If you're using a physical one, I'm pretty sure those are not getting discontinued. I think. Does anyone else know for sure? Oh, you're about to play that game where you press buttons to activate animations? That's pretty good. That is pretty good. I believe they said it a month ago, Cat Damon. Repeatedly summoning Eos. I think repeatedly summoning Eos should do something. Let me just do this. Oh, can you do a little bit more damage, Amokius? It's just I can't see it because there's the big number in front. Just a little bit more. I don't think it does anything. That is surprising. Yes, Space Queen, there is in each Stone Sky Sea level range, there is one at the very top that syncs your level, but it also adjusts your item level, of course. I'm guessing what you're actually looking for is something where you can practice your ultimate gear sets, is that right? Phil, if you post the link in Discord, I can post it in the chat. It is quite important. But if you post it on Discord, I can post it. A gatherer using the Arbor Call. Hmm. Oh boy. Doesn't look like it does anything either. I get what you mean, Space Queen. I believe the level syncs in Stone Sky Sea sets you to the level and then at a quite low item level for the level, which is mildly annoying, I could imagine, but you can practice the rotation at that level. If you watch any of my newest versions of my job guides, you'll notice in the level, in the level 1 to 50 guides, for the most part, I'll be standing in the level 60 Stone Sky Sea area. If I need to show something that I can't at level 60, I might go out somewhere where I can find like a fate or something that can sink me down so that I can demonstrate it. But usually I'm just standing there at the level 60 sync so that I can demonstrate everything, and then when I go to demonstrate actions that are above level 60, I go to the Stormblood area, then I go to the Shadowbringers area, and then I finish in the Endwalker area. Just because it's quite convenient that I can just use an action, hop out, in again, and then the cooldown is up. But that's the reason, is because I can demonstrate these things. I can demonstrate the rotation correctly. If you see some of my older job guides, you'll see that I have quite a lot of trouble actually demonstrating the rotations because I don't, I have all the high-level traits and stuff. Some particularly interesting examples include like the opener demonstration for Monk in my level 1 to 50 guide, where I go to... Oh, where is it? I go like here to here because there's a level 50 fate so that I can use perfect balance correctly without having the problem of having to deal with with Masterful Blitz. An 8-man Stone Sky Sea dummy would be pretty nice as well. Just generally, more stuff for Stone Sky Sea would be pretty nice. But I can't, you know, I can understand why they haven't done that much about it. Shiro says, and don't forget that if all you need is a training dummy, you can enter an Explorer mode dungeon at any time for free. That is also true. If you go here, this one, Explorer mode, and enter a dungeon, any dungeon, you can just summon a striking dummy. You can do that from anywhere. But that would be nice, Phil. Wouldn't you be able to do that? Wait, no. Well, yes and no. Does anyone know? Does anyone know how much HP one of these dummies had? Alright, goddammit, it's up to you. I had to switch because I was using the Squeelix phone token. And I had to change. Because... well, because that's the one getting discontinued. And I decided to do it sooner rather than later because it would be very like me to forget. Erdel says 3.5 million. Oh. The striking dummy has 3.5 million HP. That would be something you would test. Let's find out. Oh, I don't remember that, Space Queen. I don't remember seeing that. But I don't remember if the reason why I don't know that is because I didn't use Stone Sky Sea at that moment, or because I didn't see it. But yeah, if they have like 3.5 million HP, then I mean, you could take your 8-man group and like practice on it. And then the thing you would need to keep track of is how many times you kill it before you stop your practice, right? Like if you kill it 10 times, then you know you've done 35 million damage. And then you just need to keep track of the clock separately. Like, you can make a scuffed Stone Sky Sea session like that. And the reason why I didn't suggest doing it with Explorer mode is because, for some reason, it's basically only 4-man content that you can do Explorer mode with. I think? I'm pretty sure. Just having the timer pressure on you, I mean. Yeah, so again, the way you would have to do it is you would have to like set a timer that the entire group can see. And you have to set a strict time limit where you have to stop. Because otherwise, everyone has different opinions on when is a good time to stop, right? Like, the best time to stop a session is right after the 2-minute burst. In fact, maybe you shouldn't set a strict timer. Maybe you should just say, well, when the dummy dies for the 3rd or 4th time or something, that's when the time's up. That's when we've killed the boss, and then we just need to check how much time that took. That means that you can't plan around it. Like, you just have to go, oh, the boss is about to die for the last time. I have to do my... What's the maximum duration on a countdown? 60 seconds. Oh, an angel is here. I'm pretty sure it's 60 seconds. I'm pretty sure if you use a wait command, I'm pretty sure you could just set it to say 1 minute has passed, and then 60 seconds later it says 2 minutes have passed, and so on and so forth. But that of course also means that whoever uses that macro has to have no other macros in their rotation. So you have to like specify who's doing it. Because if you use a new macro while a macro's going, it cancels all other macros. Yeah, exactly, Zero. Exactly. The boss is about to die. I have to double dragon kick into six-sided staff, panic, and then the boss doesn't die. And then you're sitting there like... just sadness. But yeah, you could do that. But yeah, I think part of the reason why it makes pretty good sense that they haven't gotten too far into like customizing the Stone Sky Sea is probably because the way they've done it now doesn't take that many resources. Like, it's serviceable, it's workable. But if like there's no need to add more. Like, I think there's actually a lot of players that don't even know that Stone Sky Sea exists, which is of course a problem of its own. If Stone Sky Sea was more practical and more customizable, then people might use it more, and that might lead to, you know, more popularity of it. Space Queen says, but if your party's using macros for their rotation, you have other problems. Well, not exactly, not entirely, not precisely, kind of, but not completely. Dragoons commonly use a macro to target their dragon sight so that they don't have to like switch target to whoever they're going to use dragon sight on. That is pretty common and like pretty normal, and you don't lose anything from that. The key thing is don't use macros on GCDs is my advice, but dragon sight is an OGCD, so that's okay. Are there other examples? Some astrologians, I think it's difficult to optimize astrologian if you use macros for your card plays, but some astrologians do. Old Salted Earth as well. I actually had a I actually used a Salted Earth macro. Here it is. It makes Salted Earth do what it does now. And yeah, some people use it for Shirk, but of course in a striking dummy situation where you're practicing, that wouldn't be an issue, but that is true. But it's not so bad. It's more what you're using your macros for. Some astrologians use a macro for Earthly Star, so that instead of having to press twice, they just press once and it places it under whoever they're targeting. Don't think I have a macro on hand for that. But, I think this should work. Yep. But apparently you can't detonate it with that. Interesting. What does GT off do? That's true, it's because it's called Stellar Detonation. Skip the targeting phase. Oh. It is interesting that you can't go into settings and just have it like skip that, so you just press once and it'll place it at your cursor. I feel like that would be nice if they could just add that as an additional option. But that's how it is. And what we have is better than what we had. Like, it's still an improvement. But yeah, that is a like it is an interesting thing you can do with macros, is that you can separate things, like in this example with Earthly Star, where if you were to use a macro to place Earthly Star, you can't accidentally detonate it by pressing the button again. On the other hand, unless you use a separate keybind to detonate it then, and good luck finding space for that, then you would not be able to do that in case you needed it. And given that Earthly Star is a pet, you might want to manually detonate Earthly Star before raid buffs end, and sometimes you have to manually detonate it for that. Sometimes. I think it's very rare, but like in an optimized situation, but it can happen. I think we will not do P12. I think we're good. I feel like we got some science stuff done instead. But speaking of conversation stuff, remember that on Thursday we have Tea Time stream. And if you would like me to like have a look at your what's up, Emir? Do you really want to do the P12 now? I did say at the start that I don't know if we would have time. We kinda finished the Alliance raid kinda late for it. Anyway, we have Tea Time on Thursday, which is where I review some clips, and we talk about Final Fantasy XIV just in general, a little bit like this, just hanging out, not doing roulettes or anything, so we're focused on just talking, learning. So if you think that's fun, remember, Thursday. And if you would like me to review something that you did in Final Fantasy XIV, remember that you can post a clip on the community Discord server, where you will also find the weekly schedule, where you can see that the Tea Time stream is on Thursday. And you can also see the announcement room, where I post links whenever there's a new video, a new stream, whatever it is, it shows up there first. And if you go to the role assignments, you can also get the reminder role, which means that you will get a little notification whenever I do post a video, make a stream, whatever it is, and you also get a 15-minute in advance reminder whenever there's something time sensitive, such as, you know, a start of a stream. So consider that. And if you did enjoy this particular stream, it would help me very much if you leave a like on the stream. The thumbs up on YouTube, that tells YouTube that this was a very enjoyable stream and you would like more people to see it. So thank you so much in advance. I think that is everything we have. I do hope you enjoyed it. I can imagine that just cycling through some roulettes with ranged DPS jobs might not be the most incredibly vastly different thing. But I do hope that some people find it at least entertaining, especially when I totally nailed that saber dance press in the Alliance raid and totally didn't throw myself off the arena. But yeah. Thank you so much for watching, and good night, good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you so much, Mazekiel. Thank you. And I hope to see you all very soon. Bye-bye.